We're here because free speech is under attack. We're here because people are being convinced that socialism works. We're here because people are being judged guilty until proven innocent. We are fighting back with facts. This is not a safe zone, so buckle up, Buttercup. This is the raw, naked truth.
It's all about your money on this edition of the Raw Naked Truths Wallet Watch. I'm your host, Eric Lopkin, and I'm here with Chris Calandra of Elliott Wealth Financial to talk about what's going on in the markets, inflation, and what you need to know about your money. Chris, it's good to have you.
Yeah, same here, Eric.
So last week we had what seemed to be a very positive jobs report, although it wasn't taken that way by the markets.
Yes, we are at a point in time when everything is a little weird when it comes to the markets and the economy as a whole. So the backdrop, Eric, is we have rampant inflation, the likes we haven't seen for 40 years. You've talked a lot about it on your show. What the Fed is doing is aggressively raising interest rates to beat down inflation. And the idea of raising interest rates is to cool off the economy, to reduce some of the excess liquidity in the marketplace, kind of tame things. So the good jobs market, relatively good job report last week, means that thus far, the Federal Reserve's aggressive interest rate activity over the last couple of months hasn't really had the desired effect yet. So good news sort of equaled bad news. Did I explain that okay?
I think you did. You know, what's good for the jobs market is bad for inflation. And of course, interest rates will be going up again. They're expecting another 75 basis point hike, which is going to, by most pundits' opinions, push us further into recession.
Yes, and Chairman Jay Powell of the Federal Reserve has said as much, that there's going to need to be some pain to get inflation under control, and that pain is likely going to mean a recession. Technically, you and I have talked about this, Eric. Technically, we probably are in a recession with both the first quarter and second quarter GDP growth in this country being negative, but it's a very shallow recession, if it is a recession at all. And it's weird, again, back to that word, because usually recessions are accompanied by a weak job market, and you don't see a weak job market. The unemployment rate dipped down with last week's report to historic lows, sort of where we were before the pandemic. So we're going to need to have the economy slow down in all likelihood in order for the Fed to get control of inflation. As we've talked about before, Eric, this is at cross purposes with the Biden administration, who is focused on their own policies, pursuing their own vision, and candidly wanting to secure election victories. They don't seem terribly interested in anything the Fed is doing to fight inflation. They're not really working in tandem. They're independent from one another, but they could work jointly, if you will, and that's not happening. And so the Fed will continue to raise interest rates. All indications are that that will happen, probably 0.75% at the next meeting in a few weeks. And conventional wisdom, Eric, says that there'll be another half a point increase by the end of the year, which means that we might have another 1.25% increase in interest rates before the end of the year. This comes on the heels of already several interest rate hikes, including the last three being 0.75% apiece, for a total of 2.25%. To put that in perspective, and for my clients, Eric, I'm giving a economic update webinar in a couple of days of this recording, of our recording today. And one of the things I want to share is when you look at treasury yields, just to show you how far things have come in a short period of time. So treasuries are US government bonds. You're basically lending money to the US government. The 10-year treasury, which is considered sort of a bellwether treasury, good representation of things. The 10-year treasury at the beginning of the year was 0.93%. So let's just call it 1 for ease of conversation. At the end of September, the end of the third quarter 2022, was 3.88%. Let's just call it 4. It's basically gone from 1 to 4 in 9 months. That is quite the spike in interest rates, but it is being created. This interest rate environment is being created by the rampant inflation.
Right. And of course, the rise in interest rates, it's going to affect everybody in terms of home mortgages. It's going to affect everybody in terms of credit card rates. But it's also going to affect the federal government in that the national debt just hit $31 trillion for the first time, and those borrowing costs are going to go up as well.
Yes, they are likely to go up. Now, there is a counterbalance to that, and that is that the U.S. rates are very attractive around the world, and investors around the world still want to put money in U.S. debt because of the safety and power of the U.S. government. So with all of our problems, and they are numerous, we're still a desirable place to park money. So you do have a steady supply of capital from around the world, which will probably help put a bit of a lid on interest rates. But you're right, our borrowing costs are going to go up, and that will be a problem for the budget and the deficit. But where we are politically, in my opinion, Eric, is the Democratic Party, the Biden administration, has no interest whatsoever in talking about that or addressing that. And candidly, I don't think the Republicans are focused on that too much either. So it is an issue. It's just not one that's drawing much attention today.
Yeah, each party tends to talk about that when they don't control the purse strings, and then as soon as they get control, they don't care anymore. And we've seen that for years. Now, couple other things I want to hit upon. Going back to the jobs report. The jobs report, while it seemed to be a strong report, is a little misleading because the participation rate is almost at its lowest point historically. And we've had a lot of layoffs already starting to be announced. Stanley Black & Decker announced layoffs. Warner Brothers Discovery is announcing layoffs today. A lot of companies, tech companies, have done hiring freezes, and now they're expecting to have layoffs. So is the job market really as strong as that report indicates?
No, I think you bring up good points, and it probably is not. The participation rate, just to catch everybody up, is the percentage of working age adults that are in the workforce. It's a different way to look at unemployment. It's different than the mainline number you saw reported last week. And it's one of the mysteries that have come out of the pandemic, which is where did all the workers go? Because the participation rate is low, meaning there's a lot of working age folks that are not really unemployed. They're not being counted in the unemployment number, yet they're not in the workforce. Not sure exactly where they are or what is at play. Some people have estimated that's because of the richness of government handouts during the pandemic. I think that might explain a little bit, but not a lot. Back to your point, though, yes, another part of the job market is that there's a lot of people that are working second jobs today, and that is helping the job report, but that's not exactly a wonderful indication of a strong job market. So there are weaknesses in the job market, but generally speaking, given the inflation, given the inflation, given the rising interest rates, given the shallow recession or risk of a recession, depending on your definition of a recession, It's still a pretty good job market compared to that. I think, though, the job market is likely to weaken as the Fed unleashes more interest rate hikes, trying to get inflation under control, which means a slowdown in economic activity. So it's probably something that we'll see weaken moving forward. And you're right, it's not a perfect job market, but it's not bad. It's not bad.
Well put. One final note last week, OPEC Plus cut oil production. Of course, the Biden administration has refused to unleash the American energy industry. This is going to push oil and gas prices up further, where we've already seen gas prices rising again. And as most people realize, everything we buy has to be shipped, and that means fuel prices raise all the other prices. Where do you see this going?
I think we'll see a continuation of this because the Biden administration is not going to, in my opinion, change their policy prescription, which is to not embrace fossil fuel, quite the contrary, to push against fossil fuel. The United States was energy independent under the Trump administration. In fact, we had begun exporting energy in a way we had not seen in decades. But with the Biden administration, including his first day in office, put an end to that with multiple executive orders that really clamped down on US energy production. Not just, Eric, and sometimes I think the media misconstrues this, probably purposefully, is it's not just what the Biden administration does actively, but it's also the tone they are setting, being hostile to US energy production. So his solution has been to tap into the strategic oil reserve. And he has done that to a degree that we have not seen in probably forever. Other presidents have tapped into the strategic oil reserve at certain points, but not to the degree that the Biden administration has. I think I read that the oil reserve is at a 40-year low. So it's something that can be used as a tool, as a Band-Aid temporarily, but he's not pairing that policy of using the strategic oil reserve to help increase supply with anything else in terms of trying to unleash, to use your term, American oil production. The Biden administration simply is not going to alter their course, which means that you're going to have to rely on foreign countries, OPEC, to help fill in the supply. And they have their own strategic purposes. And to expect them to increase oil supply because we're not willing to do it, it's easy to criticize Saudi Arabia or OPEC, but it's not clear why they would do what we want to do, what we want them to do, because we're not willing to do it ourselves. It's kind of, again, weird, right? That's my theme word for today's discussion. It's kind of weird. It's embarrassing a bit for the Biden administration because he did go and petition Saudi Arabia, which is the most powerful of the OPEC nations, the biggest oil producer in OPEC, to try and convince them to up their production. And he not only did not achieve that goal, they did not even keep it where it was before. They cut it by $2 million a day was the announcement, I think. And it's a bit of a slap in the face to the Biden administration, but it's kind of predictable because he's already telegraphing what he wants to do. And why would OPEC want oil prices to be lower if they have a chance for it to be higher? It's just a weird kind of thing. But the reality is the Biden administration is going to maintain their hostility towards energy production. And as long as that happens, it's going to be a little tricky trying to keep energy prices down unless we get a recession and you have demand drop off, which is also undesirable.
Yeah, it looks like we've got to figure out the best of a bad situation. Recession either here or on the horizon, depending on your definition. Energy prices going up, inflation going up, interest rates going up. As you said, it's a weird situation. And that's the raw naked truth. Thanks for being here, Chris. You can catch every episode of The Raw Naked Truth at xvadio.com/podcasts, the Apple Podcasts app, Google Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, Amazon Music, Audible, and wherever you find podcasts. We'll see you next time.